All right, let's talk about the hidden world of costs and benefits that are all around us every single day. Things like the cost of pollution from a factory, or even the unseen benefit you get from your neighbor's amazing garden. Today, we're diving into a concept that explains all of this, and it's called externalities. So, to kick things off, let's start with a really basic question. Why does pollution even exist? Seriously, think about it. Is there some evil CEO out there whose whole business model is just to create smog? Yeah, of course not. Nobody is in the business of making pollution on purpose. The real insight here is that it's an unintended byproduct. It's a side effect of making something else we actually want, like electricity or a new smartphone. And that idea of a side effect, that's everything. Now, in economics, this side effect has an official name, an externality. It's any cost or benefit that hits someone who wasn't part of the original transaction. It could be the factory smoke that affects a nearby town's air quality, or on the flip side, it's the benefit a farmer gets when a beekeeper's hives pollinate his crops for free. So, what's the big deal? We've got these side effects, who cares? Well, this is where a perfectly good, efficient market can suddenly go haywire. Let's stick with our electricity example. A power company has costs it can easily count, right? The fuel, the power plant itself, the salaries for its workers. Economists call these private costs. But what about the pollution, the health issues it might cause, the environmental damage? Who's footing that bill? And this chart breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you have the private cost. That's what the company sees on its spreadsheet. But on the other, you have the true social cost, which is the company's private costs, plus all those external costs that society has to deal with. And as you can see, there's a big, big gap between them. So what's the result of that gap? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Since the market only sees that lower private cost, it basically thinks electricity is way cheaper to make than it actually is. And the outcome is totally predictable. We end up producing way too much electricity and selling it at a price that is way too low to cover its real cost. This is the textbook definition of what's called a market failure. The free market, which is usually so good at figuring out prices and quantities, just gets it completely wrong. It fails because it can't see the full picture. It's blind to those external costs. But here's the thing, not all side effects are bad news. We've been talking about negative externalities, like pollution, where the social cost is higher than the private cost. But you also have positive externalities. A fantastic example is education. Getting an education is obviously good for you, but it's also good for everyone else. You have a more productive, more informed society. The social benefit is way bigger than just your private benefit, and because the market only sees the private part, we actually end up with an underproduction of these good things. Okay, so we've got a problem. Markets are making too much of the bad stuff and not enough of the good stuff. So what do? Well, the good news is, economists have a whole toolkit designed to fix these kinds of problems. To find the solution, you've got to understand the root cause. And it really boils down to this quote here. Externalities pop up because of incomplete property rights. Just think about it for a second. Who owns the clean air? Who owns the quiet of a neighborhood? When you can't really answer that, you're going to have problems. Now, one of the most elegant solutions is something called the Coase Theorem. The idea here is that sometimes you don't even need the government. If you just do two things. First, assign clear property rights, like saying the stream belongs to the farmer, not the factory. And second, make sure it's easy for them to talk. Well, they can often just bargain and figure out an efficient solution on their own. But what about massive problems like nationwide pollution? You can't just get everyone in a room to bargain. That's when we turn to government solutions. And tool number one is a corrective tax. These are often called Pigovian taxes, named after the economist Arthur Pigou. And the logic is really clever. You set a tax that's equal to the cost of the damage from the pollution. This forces the polluter to finally pay for that external cost. In other words, you make them internalize the externality. And just like that, the market price reflects the true social cost, and it naturally corrects itself to produce less. Economists love this because it's a tax that actually fixes a problem and raises money. It's a double dividend. And for the good stuff, the positive externalities, well, you just flip the logic on its head. If we're not getting enough of something beneficial like education, the government can offer a subsidy, things like student loans or grants, to make it cheaper and encourage more people to do it, pushing us toward that better, more efficient outcome. All right, another really powerful market-based solution is called cap and trade. It's a two-step dance. First, the cap. The government decides on a maximum total amount of a certain pollutant that's allowed, period. Then it issues permits to companies for that amount. But here's the cool part, the trade. If a company gets really good at cutting its pollution, it can sell its leftover permits to another company that's struggling. And this isn't just a theory from a textbook. It really works. The cap-and-trade program for sulfur dioxide in the US, the one designed to stop acid rain, was a huge success. I mean, just look at this number. The benefits were at least 25 times greater than the costs. That's proof that you can actually use the power of the market to solve the market's own failures. It's pretty incredible. Now, I'm going to say something that might sound a little weird. The goal of all these smart policies, it isn't actually to get rid of all the bad things entirely. It's about finding the right amount of them. So let me ask you, is the ideal amount of pollution 0? I mean, our first reaction, our gut feeling, is to shout, yes, of course. But from an economic point of view, the answer is a lot more interesting. And the answer is not necessarily. Think about it. Getting rid of the first 90% of pollution might be relatively cheap, but getting rid of that very last molecule could be astronomically expensive for a tiny little benefit. Economics tells us the efficient level is where the cost of getting rid of one more unit of pollution is exactly equal to the benefit you get from doing it. It's a trade-off. We accept a certain amount of pollution as the price for having things like electricity and modern transportation. Okay, so let's zoom out one last time, because this entire way of thinking about externalities, it helps us understand another famous problem in economics. Economists love to sort things into categories, and this grid is a really useful one. All goods can be classified based on 2 questions. Can you stop someone from using it? And does your use prevent someone else's? Now, I want you to focus on that top right box, common resources. We're talking about things like fish in the ocean. They are non-excludable, it's hard to stop anyone from fishing. But they're also rival. A fish I catch is a fish you can't. And this setup leads directly to what's called the tragedy of the commons. Because no single fisherman owns the ocean, their incentive is to catch as many fish as possible. They think about their private benefit, but they ignore the costs they're imposing on every other fisherman by taking fish out of the sea. Sound familiar? The resource gets overused. It is, at its heart, a negative externality problem. And this brings us right back to the beginning. The unifying theory of everything we've talked about today is right here in this quote. Whether we're talking about a factory's smoke or overfishing in the ocean, the root cause is identical: a lack of clearly defined and enforced property rights. If nobody owns it, nobody has the incentive to take care of it. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you walk outside, start looking for these things. Start spotting the hidden costs and benefits. From the noise of a construction project to the way a good idea spreads online, what are the economic side effects, the externalities, that are shaping your world? I promise you, once you start to see them, you will see them absolutely everywhere.